I'm so glad you gave birth safely. I'm sorry I couldn't do anything. It's all right. Having you here is more than enough. Let's win our happiness together. Those words made me feel terribly nauseous. But I couldn't just leave things as they were. I finally reached for the door. I knocked lightly and opened it. Hey, who do you think the father of this child is? As I entered the hospital room, I responded to Buffy's words and looked up. Who could it be? Someone we know, huh, Evelyn? Jake, panicked, cut into our conversation with those words. For some reason, both the presumptuous Buffy and the panicked Jake seemed utterly ridiculous to me, and I spat out. Of course, I know. Congratulations. Be happy. Make that child happy, the two of you. And with that, I left Jake behind and exited the hospital room. Surely, divine retribution would befall them. There's no way they could live happily ever after, making others unhappy. I was off to prepare a new future for the two of them. My name is Evelyn. I'm a 37-year-old housewife. I was born and raised in a rural area. I have one younger sister. I grew up happily as the eldest daughter of a very ordinary family. After graduating high school, I worked as an office worker for a local company. It wasn't flashy, but I lived my days earnestly and joyfully. During my work, I was introduced to my husband, Jake. Jake was the son of a client's president. He was 3 years older than me, a person far too good for me. The executive who introduced Jake to me said to his father, the president, "Evelyn is serious and precise in her work. She's kind to our clients and has a good reputation. If an executive who never praises anyone says so, she must be a wonderful young lady." My father-in-law liked me from the first time we met. And Jake also took a liking to me, leading to our dating, and we got married when I was 33. I quit my job and became a housewife. Everyone blessed me for it. But there was one person who didn't. That was my younger sister, Buffy. Buffy, 10 years younger than me. My much younger sister was the long-awaited second child, born after my mother underwent fertility treatment. Therefore, she was very much loved and spoiled by the family. Of course, I also adored Buffy beyond words. "I want pudding." "That's your sister's." "Buffy, you had some yesterday, remember?" "It's okay, let her have it. I've often allowed her whims like this since we were kids." Because of that, Buffy developed into a character quite the opposite of me, skilled at being pampered. She grew up to clearly express her opinions, for better or worse. "I don't want to wear the clothes you wore. They're unfashionable and I don't want to wear them." When she was in elementary school, she refused to wear the clothes I had worn, troubling our mother. Truth be told, our family, though average, was on the lower end of the spectrum, far from wealthy. I too wore clothes handed down from relatives, but I never complained, no matter how much I disliked them. It's not that Buffy shouldn't complain because I didn't, but I believe there's value in learning to endure. "They're not unfashionable." "Sure, they're a bit old, but the design is still wearable today." If I even slightly objected, she would cheekily retort, "You don't realize the clothes are unfashionable because you're unfashionable." Perhaps I'm not stylish, but the new clothes I occasionally received were carefully worn and preserved by our mother. Since I wasn't into flashy clothes, I preferred basic items from brands that weren't trending. I thought Buffy could wear them without issue. It must have been the fact they were my hand-me-downs that she couldn't stand. Yet, as blood-related sisters, our tastes were unknowingly similar, and Buffy often ended up choosing items in the same colors as mine. But her cuteness allowed us, including our parents, to spoil her nonetheless. As a high schooler, Buffy's whimsicality worsened as if fueled. She'd demand pocket money, and if she wanted something, be it cosmetics or a bag, she'd buy it without hesitation. She'd skip school if she felt like it and go out at night if she wanted to play. By this time, our parents, not just indulging her, scolded Buffy on numerous occasions. Searching for Buffy in the middle of the night wasn't a 1 or 2 time event. If our parents refused to give her allowance, she'd sneak off to our unsuspecting grandparents to coax some money out of them. Lectures and restrictions did little. The free-spirited Buffy of her childhood didn't change her ways. I've spoiled Buffy too much. What if she skips too much and gets expelled? My mother seemed to feel responsible for Buffy's behavior. However, Buffy managed to graduate high school and even landed a job. We were all relieved, but she quit the company in a month. There was this smelly old man there, she said, an excuse that was hardly valid. At 23, she'd been in and out of part-time jobs. Now an adult, our parents and I no longer said much. She's been working steadily for the past 2 years. Maybe she's learned a bit about personal responsibility and has calmed down somewhat. But upon my marriage, she suddenly wanted to quit her job too. Isn't it unfair that only you get to marry the boss's son and become a housewife? I'm so jealous. That was Buffy's first reaction when I announced my marriage. Being a housewife still means doing household chores, and I plan to handle some uncomplicated company tasks unpaid at home. Even when I explained, the mere idea of quitting work seemed too enticing for her. Housework can be done quickly, and company work is just a few minutes, right? It's not that simple. You can't just slack off. That's right. And having a father-in-law who's a company president means lots of family obligations, doesn't it? It doesn't sound relaxing at all. My mother took my side, but Buffy was far from convinced. It's just a matter of enduring until the in-laws are gone. Your father-in-law is old, right? In a few years, you'll be the president's wife, won't you? What a thing to say! I was deeply offended by Buffy's remarks. Seeing my displeasure, Buffy laughed it off as a joke. But neither I nor our parents could laugh, shocked by her statement. Despite everyone thinking her joke went too far, Buffy indeed quit her job after a while. I quit my job, so I'll start doing the household chores tomorrow. Housewife. Never having helped our mother, her sudden declaration threw us for a loop. I was set to marry and move out in a few months, but my parents, stuck living with Buffy, were understandably inconvenienced. Can't believe she actually quit her job. My complaint was met with a wry smile from our parents. Just when we thought she'd settled down, Buffy's still a child at heart. Fine for now, but what does she plan to do as she gets older without a steady job? Despite talk of personal responsibility, our parents couldn't help but worry. We just hope Buffy doesn't cause you any trouble. Yes, you can't let Buffy's whims affect your happiness. In the end, I couldn't do anything about Buffy, who was all too eager to play the housewife role, and left to start my own family through marriage. Because of this, I couldn't help but worry about my parents' home even after getting married. My in-laws were kind, and I didn't face any inconveniences in daily life, but as expected, being a housewife was challenging. There was more to it than just household chores and work. There were also relative visits and preparing gifts for company relations, which seemed overwhelming. Despite living separately, my mother-in-law would come over to teach me how to manage these duties, saying, "It must be tough having come into this family," showing her concern for me. No. I know it's hard, I've been there. But let's take it easy and not try to do too much at once. Trying too hard can make you feel suffocated. My mother-in-law said this with a smile, teaching me various things. Being a wife comes with many challenges, including dealing with in-laws. Some friends thought it sounded difficult, but my mother-in-law always showed concern for me and even prepared meals while I was busy learning the ropes. I was deeply touched by how fortunate I was to have such wonderful in-laws. Both Dad and Mom are really happy that you became my wife, Jake told me. That's how I gradually became integrated into the family as a wife. 2 years after getting married, I was blessed with our first child, which delighted my in-laws. Jake seemed to be looking forward to the child's birth as well. However, contrary to this happiness, I had a concerning thought. It was about Jake's suspicious behavior. He started taking his mobile phone with him to the bathroom and had an increasing number of work dinners, reducing our time together. Concerned about his decreasing time at home, I once mentioned, "You seem busy lately." "I'm about to become the president, so I'm swamped with calls and appointments," he replied, predictably returning to his mobile phone. Since becoming pregnant, I've been feeling increasingly uneasy about not having Jake around. Then, one day, I suddenly thought Jake might be having an affair. That happened when I caught Jake smiling over his phone. A smile too gleeful for a work-related message. "Just got a sudden call. I need to go out," he told me right after that smile. "Now?" "The boss there always has urgent matters." "It's okay, you can go to sleep," Jake said before rushing out of the house. I couldn't believe it. What kind of urgent matter could there be at this hour? Awakened to the reality of a husband leaving his pregnant wife alone at night, I decided it was time for Jake to see the truth, so I hired a detective. After some time, I received a call from my parents. "Buffy's been rushed to the hospital. Come quickly." Shocked by the call, I hurried to the hospital, thinking Buffy might have had ovarian torsion. "Is Buffy's exam over? Is she okay?" I asked my parents upon meeting them in the waiting room at the hospital. It turns out she was pregnant, and she started labor. "What?" I exclaimed loudly at my mother's words. "How did you not notice before?" "Buffy had regular checkups, but we weren't informed," my dad explained. "I didn't show much, and neither did Buffy, so we had no idea," my mom added. I instinctively touched my belly. Indeed, I wasn't the type to show much either. But to think no one noticed until the very end? There's no point dwelling on it now. After a while, we heard the healthy cry of a newborn. Relief was short-lived as a new problem emerged. How to raise this child? Buffy, an unmarried, self-proclaimed housewife without a job. And the father's identity unknown. Yet, it wasn't the time to address such issues with Buffy, who had just given birth, so after seeing the newborn, I went home. Buffy had a baby, I told Jake upon returning home. "Really? Buffy's a mom now?" Jake, surprised, smiled happily. "Can I go see her? How about we go together this weekend?" I only got a quick look at the baby today and plan to visit properly. "Sounds good. I'll try to rearrange my work," Jake said, then immediately started fiddling with his phone. I knew his talk of rearranging work was just talk. But I hoped seeing Buffy's child might inspire a change in him. On the weekend, Jake and I headed to the hospital where Buffy was admitted. Just before entering the hospital, my phone rang. It was from the detective agency. Answering it with Jake nearby wasn't wise. Hesitating, Jake offered. "Phone call? Can I go ahead?" Seeming eager to see the baby, I felt relieved. "Yeah, I think it'll be quick. I'll follow soon." After separating from Jake, I answered the call. The call ended, and I headed to the room with a heavy heart. Then, I heard voices from inside. "I'm so glad you gave birth safely. I'm sorry I couldn't do more." "It's all right. Having you here is enough, Jake. Let's win our happiness together." The phone call still fresh, those words made me feel terribly nauseous. But I couldn't just leave. I reached for the door, knocked lightly, and opened it. "Buffy, how are you feeling?" "Sis, you came!" "Of course." Jake, holding the baby, looked delighted. I ended up having mine first. Healthy and cute, right? I wonder what your child will be like. Indeed. Buffy seemed eager to boast, which irritated me. But I kept my response brief to avoid provocation. Perhaps upset I didn't react badly, Buffy pressed on. Hey, who do you think the father of this child is? I looked up at her words. Who could it be? Someone we know, huh, Evelyn? Jake, panicked, cut into our conversation. The presumptuous Buffy and the flustered Jake seemed utterly ridiculous to me, and I spat out. Of course, I know. Congratulations, be happy. Make sure you both make that child happy. Evelyn. I'll be leaving now. You're leaving already? Wait, please. Jake, in a hurry to follow me after placing the baby back in the bed, was stopped by Buffy. No need to rush if she already knows. Good for you, Jake. Jake, caught by Buffy's grasp on his clothes, was left flustered and unable to move. Leaving him behind, I exited the hospital room. I headed straight to the detective agency. The call earlier was to inform me that the evidence was ready. The detective hesitantly disclosed. Actually, we've seen someone resembling Jake at an obstetrics and gynecology clinic about 10 minutes west from Evelyn's home, attending appointments with a woman. That was the exact clinic where Buffy had given birth. It seemed unbelievable, but considering Buffy had always wanted what was mine, it was plausible. The conversation earlier confirmed my suspicions. Without a doubt, Jake had been unfaithful with Buffy. After collecting the evidence from the detective, I went to my in-laws. Jake has had a child. A child? What do you mean? It's not time yet, is it? My in-laws were puzzled by my statement. Yes. Not my child. Please, look at this. I presented the evidence received from the detective. As they examined it, their faces turned pale, realizing the truth. They apologized profusely afterward. We had no idea it would come to this. My mother-in-law was near tears. I'm not asking for apologies from you too, but I cannot forgive Jake. I think a divorce is inevitable. That's understandable. To make a wonderful woman like Evelyn suffer, we can't forgive our son either. We're truly sorry, Evelyn. We'll do anything we can to help. Thank you. I was grateful for their understanding. Feeling a smooth divorce might be possible. After our conversation, their anger turned towards Jake. What were you thinking, Jake? We'll call him right away and demand an explanation. With that, my father-in-law immediately dialed Jake. As soon as the call connected, he shouted, I heard everything from Evelyn. What's this all about? Come and explain yourself. It's a misunderstanding. Listen to me. Jake sounded panicked over the phone. His pitiful voice made me chuckle softly, though my in-laws were not amused. All right, we'll listen. But get here now. I'm sorry. I'll be right there. His voice sounded like a scolded child. Imagining his state, I let out a small laugh. Not wanting to face Jake, I went home and started packing. This house was a wedding gift from my father-in-law, and my mother-in-law had furnished it for me. Despite the divorce and moving out, I didn't want Buffy to take away everything my in-laws had given me. When I shared my feelings, my in-laws responded. Of course. We gave that house and furniture to you, Evelyn. But we understand if you don't want to live there anymore. We have a condo closer to the station, so you should move there for now. Thank you. With my in-laws arranging a new place and movers, I was able to move out quickly. Jake seemed to be kept at his parents' house for reflection and wasn't allowed to go to work. My mother-in-law kept me updated on his situation. About a week later, I finally received a call from Jake. Evelyn! I finally managed to call. Mom took my phone away. What's this about a divorce? There's nothing to discuss. How can we continue our marriage when there's a child with another woman? It was just a fling with Buffy. I never thought she'd get pregnant. Anyway, I'm on my way home now. Let's talk. Don't leave, please. Jake hurriedly ended the call, but I couldn't help laughing. I had already moved out. Where does he think he's going? Sure enough, Jake called again a few minutes later. What do you mean there's no house? Laughing, I responded. I sold the house. The new owner plans to turn it into a parking lot. You can't just do that. That house is in my father's name. Of course, I got permission. I disposed of your things that day. So, you no longer have a home. Go back to your parents' house quietly. After I moved, my father-in-law sold the house. I was grateful for his support. And as I told Jake, the new owner planned to turn it into a parking lot. The house was demolished a few days ago. I even went to see it being torn down. I thought I might feel sad, but watching the house break apart was oddly satisfying. We can't really go back, can we? Standing in front of the empty lot where the house once was, perhaps? Jake's voice sounds weak and full of despair. He's a man with a poor sense of finality, even though I've said there's no going back from the start. If he regretted it this much, he should have never cheated in the first place. You're being persistent. Reflect on your actions back at your parents' place. Jake must have fled his parents' scolding, seeking refuge, but there was nowhere left for him. He had destroyed everything himself. That night, my parents called. Buffy is saying Jake is the baby's father, but that must be a mistake, right? Apparently, Buffy had been insisting on this since her discharge, but my parents ignored her, thinking it impossible. However, as she persisted, my mother finally reached out to me, worried. Sorry to say, but Buffy's claim is true. I plan to divorce Jake. My goodness! I've informed Jake's parents and they're arranging a new place for me. We'll start discussing the divorce soon. My mother sounded like she was crying over the phone. As she repeatedly apologized, I felt tears welling up, too. Despite feeling no responsibility, she was burdened by Buffy's actions. Even as an adult, Buffy seemed unaware of the pain her actions caused others. Don't worry about anything, Mom. I reassured my parents and ended the call. Then, with my in-laws present, we began discussing the divorce. I was wrong. I shouldn't have succumbed to Buffy's advances. Jake seemed not to want the divorce, repeatedly apologizing, but his words didn't resonate with me. If you feel sorry, will you marry Buffy? Such a situation. Now that the child has been born, Buffy raising it alone is impossible. You need to take responsibility. Jake couldn't say anything in response, falling silent. My father-in-law sighed deeply. We'll also support Evelyn and the newborn. You have a duty to fulfill towards Evelyn's sister and the child. Jake, having been admonished by both me and his father, reluctantly signed the divorce papers. I hope he reflects on his actions and learns from them. After our divorce, Jake remarried Buffy and began living with his in-laws. Due to the loss of the house, leaving them no choice but to live together. By that time, I was nearing my due date, comfortably living in the home my in-laws prepared for me. Sorry for taking Jake. Buffy messaged, but I ignored it. Engaging with Buffy could only cause stress, which I didn't need. But perhaps that was her aim all along. I wonder what kind of child my sister will have. Cousins, but also siblings, how funny. Well, I'm younger and prettier, so my child will definitely be better. She sent these insensitive messages, disregarding others' feelings. And hey, I haven't received a baby shower gift from you? Frustrated by her nerve, especially as I was about to become a single mother, I finally replied, "Are you home? I'll bring it over now." After ignoring her constant messages, I decided to respond to her demand for a gift and headed to Jake's house. "How are you, Evelyn?" Even after the divorce, my mother-in-law continued to show concern for me and treated me very well. On this day too, when I visited their home, she welcomed me warmly and invited me in right away. "Is Buffy here?" "Jake's off today, so she's probably around." My mother-in-law hesitated a bit, showing concern. Smiling, I said, "Great. I've brought a baby shower gift for Buffy and Jake." As I sat in the living room, my mother-in-law called for Buffy. Buffy, holding her baby and looking content, had no idea she was about to be dropped into turmoil, smirking at me mockingly. "Finally brought a baby shower gift? Well, we're not short on money." To Buffy, I handed a large envelope. It was thick. But Buffy frowned in confusion at the size of the envelope, which seemed too large to contain just cash. "What's this?" "I didn't plan to give this, but consider it my gift to you." Buffy handed the baby to Jake and cautiously opened the envelope. Her face turned pale as she sifted through the documents inside. "What's this? What does it mean?" she yelled at Jake, glaring at him. Jake, puzzled, peeked at the documents Buffy held and turned pale. "I don't know. It's not me. It's obviously you, Jake." I couldn't help but laugh at their exchange. The envelope contained investigation documents from the detective. I had shown them to my in-laws, revealing shocking truths Buffy was unaware of. It turned out Jake had multiple affairs, not just with Buffy. There were 4 women in total, with Buffy being the third. The first was apparently involved in a double affair with a subordinate's wife at the company. This woman was whom Jake had truly fallen for. According to my mother-in-law, her husband eventually found out, leading to their breakup around the time Jake married Buffy. The second was a 20-year-old girl Jake met through an app. Surprisingly, it wasn't Buffy but this girl who went to the obstetrics and gynecology clinic with him. According to the detective, it seems her visits were for an abortion. Then there was Buffy as the third. The fourth was one of Buffy's friends, whom she introduced to Jake. Of course, I knew all this, but by now, Jake was a stranger to me. No matter how many relationships Jake had, the fact that one of them was with my sister was a deal-breaker. That alone made it impossible for me to forgive Jake. I would have let this matter go quietly into the night if Buffy had shown genuine remorse and apologized, but since she persisted in boasting to me, I decided to push her off her pedestal. "Horrible! Liar!" As expected, Buffy broke down crying, calling Jake names repeatedly and even raising her hand to him, despite holding their precious child. "What's all this noise?" At that moment, my father-in-law returned home. Seeing me, he seemed slightly pleased and said, "Evelyn, you're here," before glaring at Buffy and Jake. "What are you two doing, shouting in front of the baby?" "Please listen, Dad. Jake has..." "Oh, both of you already know everything Jake did, right?" I smirked at Buffy's meltdown. That matter," my father-in-law commented, seemingly exasperated. "Anyway, it happened before your marriage with Buffy, and you're in the same boat, having been complicit in cheating. Do you think you have the right to blame Jake?" "I think only Evelyn has the right to blame Jake." Buffy bit her lip in frustration, realizing she had no support from my in-laws. Then, my father-in-law announced they had prepared a new home for the 3 of them. Buffy's fury momentarily turned to surprise at his words. "I negotiated the rent down to $800 a month for you. It's a friend's company, so they knocked off $30. Now, please leave." But her face fell again at those words.
Wait! What do you mean, leave? And why does Evelyn get a new home while we have to pay rent?
I've also arranged a new job for you. It's a sales position at that real estate company.
A new job! You're kicking me out of the company, the future president.
The two of them confronted my father-in-law. However, he said with a smile,
When did I ever say you were going to be the next president? You just assumed that on your own. Besides, I can't keep someone in the company who gets involved with a subordinate's family. Pack your things and leave.
The pair, who had been arguing, now united in their protest against my father-in-law. Watching this unfold, I was stunned, but my mother-in-law murmured beside me. Since Evelyn and Jake divorced, Dad had been planning to kick Jake out. Both he and I thought of Evelyn as true family. Those words meant more to me than anything. I silently laughed at the divine retribution my sister and her husband faced, having lost their home, food, and trust. The couple moved into a house prepared by my father-in-law and started a new life. It's a surprising 15-minute walk from the station. However, it's next to a pediatric clinic and only a 3-minute walk to the supermarket, making it an ideal location for raising children. According to my parents, Buffy complains about not being able to go out and play, but with so many temptations around, she would surely scatter her attention. I hope she focuses on raising her child in the home my father-in-law found for his grandson. Jake, under Buffy's thumb, is working as a salesperson at a real estate agency, feeling diminished. Interestingly, this real estate agency is run by a family of one of Jake's subordinates whom he had an affair with. I don't know if his actions are known at the company, but he must be feeling constrained there as well. With the additional burden of paying damages, Buffy can't live the luxurious life she desired. It's a life neither Buffy nor Jake could have imagined for themselves, but it's the situation they are in. I only wish for the child to be happy, regardless of what happens. I later gave birth to a healthy boy. Both my parents and in-laws adore him. Although the bond with my in-laws has been severed, we still keep in touch while I live in that condo. My job is now a paid remote position at my father-in-law's company, where I used to work unpaid. I became an employee and now receive a salary sufficient to raise my child on my own. I've always been modest, but I believe this is the result of valuing others and acting with integrity. Though I wasn't fortunate with my husband, I was blessed with a very cute son. I'm truly grateful for the opportunity to work from home while raising him.